So actually, yeah, also to add on to the end of Sven's, I think we can think about the presentation I'm about to give as kind of one argument for what the content of an infrastructural critique might be. Okay, so that's kind of how we were starting to think about it at the end of Sven's, as a kind of maybe what he called an articulated form. All right, so this image is documentation of a panel that took place as part of Beyond Allegories, an artist-organized congress held in Amsterdam City Hall in 2014. Can everyone hear me? Okay. The Congress was concerned with the role of art in facilitating the practice of democracy in modern Western nation states, so the idea that art could perhaps facilitate this. We must leave the problems of this proposition to one side, though. The point for this paper is that this Congress was an artwork by a socially engaged artist in the Netherlands, who's also here today, which was made in collaboration with local politicians in Amsterdam. So the panel pictured was titled Representation Beyond Citizenship, and it proposed access to the institution of education as a method of engendering citizenship outside of state sanction. The image shows two representatives from two organizations that are rendered equivalent, both within the enactment of the Congress and the space of this image, its lasting document. However, the material composition of each institution represented here is significantly divergent between them. So we're looking at two very different subjects, two very different organizations that were meant to be seen as kind of equals or kind of equivalent organizations. So on the left is Yunus Osman Noor, a Somalian refugee and member of We Are Here, a self-organized group of undocumented people based in the Netherlands. We Are Here and an organization called Here to Support, the subject of this paper, who are decisively absent from this image, together instigated a free school called the We Are Here Academy, which was already mentioned. This was intended to serve as the educational arm of We Are Here's direct action campaign. So the Academy prepares We Are Here members for state citizenship tests and interviews. It teaches the undocumented about Dutch law and available recourse to human rights law, and it recruits local activists and academics to run courses on the history and practice of direct action campaigns. Noor is pictured here as a representative of this academy. On the right is the Turkish-Kurdish artist Ahmet Ogut, also who's come up in this during the proceedings today, who initiated the project The Silent University in 2012. The Silent University is an autonomous knowledge exchange platform. This is his term for it, instigated and launched by Ogut with the goal that it is ultimately run by undocumented people. So that's an important point, that he started it and its running after he leaves is meant to go to undocumented people. The Silent University takes the form of an academic program taught by migrants who are unable to use their skills, so their professional or academic training, because of their illegal status in Europe. The Silent University is internationally recognized. It was shown at the Tate Modern. It's had presentations in cities around Europe at museums and universities, and it was also the recipient of the Visible Award, a significant cash prize for art that provides a service to humanity. So aside even from the differences between these organizations, so one is an artwork and one on the left, of course, is part of a larger direct action organization. The two subjects of this image exist on opposite sides of state recognition themselves. So one, of course, on the left is an asylum seeker who is not within what we would call political community. On the one on the right is an artist who is protected by that status, but also has a Turkish passport. So the following paper lays out the conditions which have produced the equivalency documented in this image through a focus on Here to Support, which has silently installed We Are Here on this platform and in many others. Mention of their involvement was and is entirely absent from this Congress. This paper has two parts. First, I'll establish Here to Support's negotiation of the institution of art as a practice, and not simply the exercise of a not-for-profit organization, which they are also quickly becoming. So I'll talk about that also, that they are quickly becoming an organization, but it did start as a kind of self-negating practice that I want to think about as an art practice. So the first part, I'll talk about it as a practice. So having been nominated for a European Citizenship Award this year, they are quickly, the escalation of their status to an NGO is not difficult to imagine, but I think the production of this image and its relations, and their impending NGO status can only be explained as productions of an art practice. So that's my argument. So I'll discuss Here to Support's significance for understanding contemporary forms of institutional critique, or we might say their infrastructural critique, in relationship to the work of Lee Lozano, an artist who offers in form and political orientation a way of characterizing Here to Support sustained self-negation. Secondly, I'll return to the image to excavate the significance of the comparison between We Are Here and the Silent University that was kind of made here in relation to current theories of artistic autonomy. Unlike in Ogut and affiliated practices, so we might add Tanya Bruguera or any number of other socially engaged artists, which rest on the idea that art offers a unique autonomous space for the realization of social justice, Here to Support attempts to access the fruit of art's autonomy, so art as a resource space where the terms of engagement can be continually reinvented, by completely negating its own presence, becoming a managerial invisible hand. I also want to add that I'm not kind of posing them together to say one is better than the other. The problem, of course, with Here to Support that I'll come to at the end is that it is becoming an NGO, and that has obviously its own relationships to capital. So I'm just saying both are a problem, but this is their difference. So the question of autonomy in relation to art and self-determination resides at the center of Here to Support's work with We Are Here. So the relation of art and artistic autonomy and also self-determination as a kind of autonomy resides at the center of their kind of meeting. So to briefly address the context of Here to Support's formation, so Here to Support being the people that support We Are Here, so We Are Here started in 2012 when a loosely organized tent camp of refugees in Amsterdam first self-identified to the press and began to organize for shelter with assistance from local squatting initiatives. So basically I'm just like mapping the kind of network of other people who support We Are Here. So Here to Support started as a kind of artistic arm of that, but they were also supported by anarchist communities who negotiated their occupation of different buildings, and they also who continue actually to help We Are Here legally occupy different buildings. So in more recent years, these groups have helped to broker legal deals with the city for We Are Here's legal occupation of vacant buildings. So in addition to organized support from this anarchist community, a network of white women has developed around We Are Here who provide subsistence aid and various forms of care. This network of women is not expressly critical of the state, nor is their consciousness of the neocolonial relationships operative in their care, as far as I can tell, yet they are the most reliable source, again from my casual observation, of the most immediate forms of help. So this is the kind of network of relations of support around We Are Here, Here to Support being just one of them. So Here to Support was started by two white Dutch women, an artist and a dancer, both former participants in Amsterdam's Occupy Artists encampment. So again, like with the other presentations, Occupy comes up as some kind of instigator, although I'm resistant to giving it that much credit, but I think this was certainly a congealment alongside We Are Here's sort of beginnings nearby. So it's important to note that Here to Support is not in We Are Here, so membership in We Are Here is only through an undocumented status, and decisions about the internal organization of the group, its goals, and protest strategies are made within We Are Here itself. This separation is really important. To return to this image, the Silent University produces the constituency that it works with. Wendelin van Oldenburg's current exhibition platform, which I think has been kind of also a silent presence during these conversations, so her current exhibition platform at With to With utilizes, I think, an aligned logic with Here to Support. So in this exhibition, the artist uses her position to offer artistic resources to existing Black activist groups. So again, she's using groups that are already formed. In the case of Tanya Bruguera, this would also be the production of her own constituency, she's been critiqued for that because obviously there are many undocumented groups that she could have worked with, but instead she chooses to form her own constituency. So this is a big difference between these kinds of otherwise aligned practices. The significant difference, though, is that Here to Support itself attempts not to appear whatsoever, not even as an identified curatorial collective. This idea of an artist offering a platform, I think what we might call a reparational platform or a reparative platform, in its recognition of the artist's privilege and access to resources, seems a key developing form of working with and against institutions, as we've already kind of discussed, I think. So Here to Support was initially founded as an action center, which began to carefully construct these kinds of intersections between We Are Here and the Dutch art system. This work takes various forms, but it uniformly operates in the following way. An art institution, so a school, museum, or gallery, invites one of the two women who head Here to Support to participate in an event. I mean, they also do other things, like they made this play Labyrinth, or they have other kinds of productions, but they always actually they invite another artist to actually be the creative director of that. So they are kind of only the sort of managers of this intersection. So as artists, they apply for residencies, funding, or exhibition opportunities. Having secured a particular engagement as artists, they instead provide that opportunity to We Are Here members to discuss their cause. This has resulted in We Are Here members appearing in dozens of art and cultural institutions in the Netherlands. So also in BAK many times, but at the Jan van Eyck, much less friendly, perhaps, institution for that kind of thing. But also at the Gerard Rietveld Academy, in many contexts, under many sort of guises, and not always something that's about being undocumented or about them necessarily. So Here to Support understands these appearances as platforms for We Are Here to publicly discuss primarily the political basis of the group, often missed in the mainstream press. So from their mission statement, Okay, so this is from their mission statement. By giving We Are Here the opportunity to express themselves, we strengthen the We Are Here protests, and we also create possibilities for learning and personal growth, while at the same time transforming the cultural institutions that provide the stage from the inside out. We must query at another time the relationship of giving to colonial power and the notion of giving a space under these conditions specifically for expression. How do frameworks of aesthetic expression continue to delimit claims of Black, Brown, and global Southern self-determination in the West? That's another question for another time. But for now, we focus on the second part, this idea of transforming the art institution. Here to Support's employment of the institution of art is an instrumentalization in plain sight, and I want to argue can be understood as a form of institutional critique after what Hito Steyerl has roughly termed its third wave, or the artist's integration into precarity. The organization of Here to Support itself reflects a fluency in the art of resource development, a skill necessary for survival as an artist who works socially or outside of market favoritism. Marina Wishman, in another text, has also suggested that this artist subject should be understood as reflective of the societal location of the artist in post-Fordism. So we know this already. A flexible, personally invested laborer, where the separation between the maintenance of the life of the artist and her work, so the line between project management and social networking as work or as artwork, becomes really impossible to delineate. So this management is exactly what Here to Support produces, but there is actually no appearing artist or artwork in the situation such as this representative one. Okay, so to go back to Hito, after extrapolating that the act of critique itself has been dismantled by, quote, neoliberal institutional criticism, I'm just going to read this other quote. So she furthers that this produces an ambivalent subject which develops multiple strategies for dealing with its dislocation. So Here to Support is a materialization of such strategies, but formalized, literally becoming institution, or as we will see, hovering between institution and reproductive worker. So Steyerl continues, this subject is on the one side being adapted to the needs of ever more precarious living conditions. On the other, there seems to have hardly been ever more need for organizing the new struggles and desires that this constituency might embrace. Here to Support represents, I think, a struggle that connects artistic precarity and the strategies that the subject has developed to the aligned but more steeply impacted precarious lives of the urban undocumented. In so doing, it temporarily empties art from its backing, instead harnessing We Are Here to the critical financial and cultural valuation that the institution of art can still offer. Okay. So to further establish Here to Support's practice as a formal one, and not simply the work of not-for-profit workers dabbling in the cultural sphere, I turn to Lee Lozano's work. A central focus of their effort is the We Are Here Academy, a free school which parallels a principal form in socially engaged art, the creation of a learning environment. However, while the We Are Here Academy, with its numerous ties to art institutions, artists, and affiliated professionals, may appear as an artwork and may appear alongside other artworks as an artwork, it is in fact the manifestation of a dropout piece, yet one realized in the formal language of socially engaged art. So by this I mean that Here to Support is adamantly not an organization presented as running by artists, and it doesn't produce art. It is rather a sustained withdrawal that is akin to the dropout works of the conceptual era, wherein the artist permanently stops all artistic production as a final work in itself. Lee Lozano's Unentitled General Strike piece, I don't have the untitled, so is an important counterpoint. So Lozano's work also drops out in the form of art it departs from, right? So it's delivered as a document, which is the key form of conceptualism, which was the form of art that she was making when she dropped out. So this was the final work. Also formally parallel, I think, is the afterlife of the dropout piece. So Lozano's dropout required total and ongoing removal from art. Only after her death did her work perhaps begin to circulate with force, but also she mostly failed in the endeavor to fully drop out, and her presence was never completely extinguished, even during her lifetime. Similar inconsistencies are apparent in Here to Support's dropouts. What I mean is there's this kind of, you have to manage the dropout. It doesn't just happen. You can't just do it and then have it be over, because you'll just be incorporated again. So similar inconsistencies, though, are apparent in Here to Support's dropout, where sometimes they must make art or claim it as such as part of their overriding strategy to support We Are Here at any cost. So Lozano is buried in an unmarked grave, which strives further, I think, to falling out of history, which again, as of this writing, as I'm talking about her right now, was unsuccessful. However, it reminds of the desire in a dropout piece for a sheer relation to an outside, for the employment of extremity in realizing a different reality through artistic collapse into it. For Lozano, dropping out meant emerging into a world of her own control, delivered by the act of self-erasure. This is the political desire I want to connect to Here to Support. Significantly, Here to Support's dropout piece required the sustained, so Here to Support's dropout work requires the sustained activation of art institutions and resources as an infrastructural critique, right, to continually reassert its own removal, because that removal exists in the assertion of We Are Here in the place of any art or artist. So it requires their kind of ongoing engagement of the art system. The Netherlands in particular favors social practice, which often takes the shape of movement building, summits, free schools, communal cooking, etc. And as such, We Are Here as a non-artist-led movement has been able to slot into and benefit from the resources generally parceled out to documented artists alone. Striking to consider is the state's simultaneous embrace of art as social practice and its increasingly brutal border regime, illustrating the role of art in legitimating state violence against those who don't participate or are somehow outside of art's embrace. Okay. So this shared failure to completely withdraw between Lozano and Here to Support illustrates withdrawal as necessitating ongoing active negation. This negation is what Here to Support produces for We Are Here. The paradox of this sustained withdrawal is that it requires ongoing management. So to tell one story of this, one of Here to Support's organizers, who was admitted to a prominent artist residence program in the Netherlands, during which she utilized the institution's resources to house and offer administrative support to a We Are Here member during a critical moment in his asylum appeals process. She had to frame this work as art at multiple moments during the residency year, so she still had to participate as an artist. She had to show up and talk, and she had to make appointments with curators, and she had to exist in the studio in order to continue this support, although she frankly and publicly would also negate these productions as art. So she would also say, this is an art, do you want to talk to him about his asylum appeals process? So again, I'm not really saying that this is better or worse, I'm just saying that this is one instantiation of what we might call infrastructural critique, I guess. So finally, to autonomy. How much time do I have? Okay, so the Silent University and aligned works of art seek artistic autonomy as it has been recently politicized in art theory, or not recently politicized, but as it has been discussed by Sven, to quote Sven, an act rather than a fact. So a temporal suspension of space rather than a fact of autonomy existing in a static object. This model, artworks which create a platform for the realization of political action, employs the hierarchy structural to art, so a single maker or leader, towards the social and political suspension of a temporary space as dictated by the artist. As we have seen, this can offer significant material gains, but it perennially requires the artist at its center for its power. This entails that the Silent University collapses when Ogut departs for another project. That's important because one of the claims of the project is that it will be given over to refugees to maintain the school themselves. So that's actually not possible because this kind of suspension of space requires the artist, and it can't be managed by museum interns afterwards because it's a position of power that is able to inaugurate this kind of space and this kind of harnessing of resources. So Tanya Bruguera's endurance performance, Immigrant Movement International, which she conceives of as an endurance performance, she talks about as never-ending, a never-ending work and an acceptance of the necessity of her presence. So I think she kind of acknowledges that by articulating it as an endurance performance. So while these processes mirror Here to Support's activities, Here to Support attempts to address the authorship problem or the author function through its continual operation of negation, its insertion device, so inserting we are here over and over and over again, acquiring a seamlessness to the point of structural critique. That is my argument, but you might disagree with me. Removing themselves from the center, although in recognition of their ongoing necessity. So they want to remove themselves, but they also recognize how they are necessary to this. They manage from the periphery. So the substance of their work then, and the absence of artistic content, is the negation of artistic authorship through formal repetition, a process, I think, oriented towards some kind of solidarity. I don't want to call it a radical solidarity, but I think it might be a solidarity forged in what are otherwise extremely condensed, colonial relations, right? Because they are also white women supporting a group of predominantly brown and black men, and they exist alongside this other group of white women who do so without a kind of critical relationship to that relationship. So I think in some ways this is a extremely complicated articulation of solidarity that has created what I think of as a formal practice. So Peter Osborne reminds us, and I'm really going to overly summarize this part of his argument, but he reminds us of Adorno's conception of art's self-legislating law of form, that the work of art is autonomous to the extent that it can generate the appearance or the illusion of autonomy through carrying out its own law of form. So it carries out its own rules, and it takes them to their extreme. So, and I think part of the problem with current conceptions of autonomous platforms is that they forget that this is an illusion somehow. So it is precisely Here to Support's law of form that produces the illusion central to this image. So they've produced this illusion, and it is the self-legislation of artistic form that produces autonomy's political meaning. A meaning that resides in its image of freedom. So the illusion is the production of the illusion of freedom. This freedom is a product of art's operation of its own law of form. In this case of this image, it's the production of a document of We Are Here's freedom and autonomy in an otherwise situation in which they don't have access to either of those things. I mean, of course, we could say none of us are free, right? But I think some of us are significantly less free. Of the two in this image, the one on the left is significantly less free, subject to continual experiences of state violence, right, as opposed to kind of the more mundane violence, other kinds of violences that we experience as full citizens, right? So this exercise is structured by, so they've produced this illusion, they've produced this autonomy through their own law of form, and this image produces freedom for the subject on the left, temporary freedom. So this exercise is structured by dependent heteronomous relations that are withheld from the illusion of autonomy presented here, right? So Nur becomes a leader when We Are Here is actually in fact structured by a complex system of consensus building by national and linguistic affinity groups. They don't actually have a leader, but he's presented here as a leader as part of this, as part of, like, I think the function of the suspension of this space. So further, thinking back to Here to Support's relationship to this group of white women, how might we think, I'm still thinking about this, of the way reproductive work is thrown into high relief in this particular production of an autonomous illusion? Such hidden reproductive work, and I'm talking about the work that Here to Support does. So on some level, they're an institution. On some level, they operate as an institution also as part of their formal device, but at the same time, they're also doing various forms of reproductive work in support of this group alongside this other group of women. So such hidden reproductive work, this whole situation makes clear, I think, behind this illusion of autonomy is a definitive feature of the, quote, functional autonomous spaces of contemporary social practice and their claims for social utility. So to conclude, Here to Support's law of form continues to progress to its ultimate end, the final negation of itself as an art practice as the group increasingly formalizes into an NGO. similar to, on the last panel, what was the discussion of becoming real estate agents. In this case, it would be a not-for-profit organization or perhaps an NGO. So this entails that they now have a board of partners, which include a commissioner of the Green Party and 2 social entrepreneurs, self-identified social entrepreneurs. So while the facade of the NGO offers yet another formal device through which Here to Support, again, as the 2 practicing artists, can recess even further from their authorship, so they become an institution and then they really are, this is a device which really removes them from a singular authoring position. They immediately approach precisely the ultimate negation, the congealment into a positive institution of social change, or as Adorno might put it, when politically committed intentions negate art as well as themselves, exiting the limited space of art separation. Here to Support as an NGO, I think, charts really dangerously close to the social justice entrepreneurialism of the present. Thanks.